The morning sky above Seoul burned orange with the fires of a dying world. Admiral Kwon pressed his face against the cracked window of the Defense Command Center, watching alien ships hover like dark clouds over the city. 3 months ago, these same streets had been filled with people going to work, children playing, life continuing as it always had. Now only smoke and silence remained. "Sir, the President is about to make the announcement," Lieutenant Park said from behind him. Her voice shook slightly. Even the bravest soldiers were afraid now. Kwon turned away from the window. The main screen showed President Kim standing at a podium, surrounded by alien creatures that looked like walking insects with too many arms. The Dominion forces had won. Earth had lost. It was that simple. "My fellow citizens of Earth," the President began, his voice heavy with defeat. "After 3 months of brave resistance, we must accept the reality of our situation. Our orbital defenses are gone. Our fleets are destroyed. Cities lie in ruins. I have no choice but to formally surrender to the Galactic Dominion." The alien commander stepped forward. Its voice came through a translator device, cold and mechanical. "The primitive world called Earth will now submit to Dominion rule. All weapons must be turned over. All technology will be shared. All citizens will work for the glory of the Dominion." Kwon felt his hands curl into fists. 3 months of fighting, 3 months of watching good people die, and this was how it ended. With words of surrender and bowed heads. Furthermore, the alien continued, "Any resistance to Dominion rule will be met with complete destruction. The galaxy celebrates another backward world brought into civilization." The broadcast ended. The room fell silent, except for the distant sound of alien ships patrolling the skies. Kwon looked around at his remaining staff. These were good people, soldiers who had fought hard and lost everything. Their faces showed the same mix of anger and despair that burned in his own chest. "What are your orders, sir?" Park asked. Kwon was quiet for a long moment. Orders. What orders could he give when the war was over and they had lost? What could anyone do when the entire planet had surrendered? "Pack up anything useful," he said finally. "We follow the surrender terms." But even as he spoke the words, Kwon knew he was lying. Not to his soldiers, but to himself. Deep in his heart, something refused to accept what had happened. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just the inability to quit that had made him a soldier in the first place. 2 hours later, Kwon stood in the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Seoul. The attack had damaged the power grid, leaving the underground passages dark and cold. But they were also hidden from alien sensors. Park and a few other soldiers had followed him down here, along with boxes of equipment they had managed to save. "Sir, what are we doing?" Park asked. "The surrender has been signed." "The war is over." "The war is not over," Kwon said quietly. "The battle is over. The war continues as long as one person refuses to give up." He thought about the alien commander's words. The galaxy celebrates another backward world brought into civilization. They thought humans were primitive, weak, easily broken. They thought Earth was just another planet to be conquered and controlled. They were wrong. Kwon had studied military history his entire life, about the Korean War, about Vietnam, about Afghanistan. He knew that superior technology and numbers did not always win wars. Sometimes, the side that refused to quit found ways to win that no one expected. "We need to contact the other resistance groups," he said. "There have to be others who did not surrender." "Sir, the communications are all monitored now," Park replied. "The Dominion controls everything, then we find another way." Kwon opened one of the boxes they had brought. Inside were pieces of alien technology, parts salvaged from crashed enemy fighters. We learned to use their own tools against them. Over the next few days, small groups of people began finding their way to the tunnels. Most were soldiers who had refused to surrender, but some were civilians who had lost everything and wanted to fight back. Among them was a young woman named Yuna, an engineer who had worked on Earth's defense systems. "I know how their ships work," she told Kwon during one of their first meetings. "I studied the wreckage. Their technology is not as advanced as they want us to believe. It can be understood, it can be copied. There was also a medic, who had treated wounded soldiers throughout the war. He was quiet but determined, the kind of person who saved lives without asking for thanks. And Nara, a communications specialist, who had managed to keep some underground networks working even after the main systems fell. The Dominion thinks we are broken, Quan told this small group gathered in the darkness of the tunnels. They think human beings give up when things get hard. They think we are like other species they have conquered. He looked at each face in the dim light. These people had lost their homes, their families, their entire world. But they were still. Here, they were still fighting. They do not understand what they are dealing with, he continued. Humans do not surrender. We adapt, we endure. We find ways to win when winning seems impossible. Above them, the city was full of alien soldiers. The government had submitted to foreign rule. The news broadcasts told everyone to cooperate with their new masters. The galaxy believed Earth was defeated, but in the tunnels below Sol, a different kind of war was beginning. It would not be fought with large armies or space fleets. It would be fought in shadows, with patience and intelligence and the kind of stubborn refusal to quit that had carried humanity through every dark moment in its history. Quan looked at the alien technology scattered around their hideout. Soon, they would learn to use these tools. Soon, they would begin to strike back. The Dominion thought they had won, but they had only awakened something they did not understand. The real war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the surrender, and the Dominion believed they controlled Earth completely. Their soldiers walked the streets of every major city, their ships patrolled the skies, and their administrators ran the government. To anyone watching from space, the planet looked peaceful and conquered, but Commander Zeth of the Dominion Third Fleet was starting to worry about the reports crossing his desk. Small things at first. Supply convoy that never reached its destination. A communication tower that stopped working for no clear reason. Equipment that broke down more often than it should. Probably just human incompetence, his aide suggested, when Zeth mentioned his concerns. These primitives do not understand proper maintenance. Zeth was not so sure. The incidents were happening too often and in too many places. But his superiors in the Dominion command did not want to hear about problems. Earth was conquered. The war was over. Any difficulties were just the normal challenges of occupying a backward world. What the Dominion did not know was that Admiral Quan's small group in the Sol tunnels had grown into something much larger. Using the alien technology Yuna had learned to modify, they had built a network of hidden bases across the planet. Each base was connected to others through stolen Dominion communication equipment, creating an invisible web of resistance. The network operated by one simple rule: stay hidden, learn everything, and strike only when success was certain. Quan had studied guerrilla warfare extensively, and he knew that the key to defeating a stronger enemy was patience. We are not trying to win battles, he explained to his team during one of their regular meetings. We are trying to make their occupation so expensive and difficult that they will wish they had never come here. Yuna had become their chief engineer, and her workshop in the tunnels was filled with modified alien devices. She had learned to take apart Dominion equipment and rebuild it for human use. Her greatest success was a cloaking device that could hide small groups of people from alien sensors. Their technology is actually quite simple once you understand the principles, she told Quan, as she worked on another device. They rely on automation and standardization. That makes them efficient, but it also makes them predictable. What it had expanded his medical operation to include not just the resistance fighters, but also civilian populations. He moved through the cities disguised as a maintenance worker, providing medical care to people who could not afford the Dominion's expensive health services. More importantly, he gathered information about alien movements and activities. The Dominion soldiers are not as strong as they pretend, he reported after one of his missions. They get sick from Earth's diseases. They have trouble with our food. They are not as adapted to our world as they want us to believe. Nara had achieved something even more impressive. She had managed to hack into the Dominion's communication network without them knowing. From her position in the Sol tunnels, she could monitor alien military traffic across the entire planet. They are requesting more supplies again, she told Quan during one of their intelligence briefings. the third request this month. Their logistics are struggling. Why? Quan asked. Because 30% of their supply convoys are disappearing, Nara replied with a smile. They think it is just bad luck or human incompetence. They do not realize we are taking their supplies and using them against them. The resistance strikes were carefully planned and perfectly timed. Dominion Patrol would find their vehicles disabled by a device that looked like a routine maintenance failure. Supply Depot would discover that their inventory records were wrong and half their equipment was missing. Communication systems would develop mysterious glitches that happened only when the aliens needed them most. Each incident was small enough to be explained away as bad luck or human error. But together, they created a pattern of constant frustration. For the occupation forces, the Dominion soldiers found themselves working harder and harder just to maintain basic operations. It is like fighting fog, Commander Zeth complained to his staff. Every time we think we have solved a problem, 3 more appear. Every time we secure an area, something goes wrong somewhere else. But the Dominion leadership remained convinced that these were just normal occupation problems. They had conquered dozens of worlds, and there were always difficulties in the beginning. The reports from Earth were annoying, but not alarming. This attitude was exactly what Quan had hoped for. Resistance was growing stronger every day. But the aliens did not take them seriously. Pride and arrogance were the Dominion's greatest weaknesses. The network now included resistance cells in every major city on Earth. Each cell operated independently, so if one was discovered, the others could continue their work. They shared information, resources, and plans through Nara's communication system. But each group made its own decisions about when and how to strike. In Tokyo, Resistance Cell led by a former police officer named Kenji had perfected the art of making Dominion equipment malfunction at critical moments. In London, a group of engineers had learned to introduce subtle errors into alien computer systems that would cause major problems weeks later. In New York, a cell of former military personnel had developed techniques for making Dominion soldiers see threats that were not there. The beauty of the network was that it did not need to win dramatic victories. It just needed to make the occupation expensive and frustrating. Every day, the Dominion spent more resources on Earth than they gained from the planet. Every day, their soldiers became more tired and paranoid. Most importantly, the network was learning. Every interaction with the Dominion revealed new information about their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Yuna's workshop produced increasingly sophisticated devices. Tay's medical knowledge included detailed information about alien biology. Nara's intelligence network extended beyond Earth to monitor Dominion activities on other worlds. I think. We are primitive, Quan said during one of their planning sessions. But we are learning faster than they realize. Every day, we understand them better. Every day, we become more dangerous. The Dominion had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that conquering Earth meant defeating humanity. But humans were not defeated. They were adapting, learning, and preparing for a much larger conflict in the tunnels beneath Seoul. Admiral Quan looked at the maps and reports spread across his desk. The network was ready for the next phase of their plan. Soon the Dominion would learn that controlling Earth was much harder than conquering it. The Dominion garrison on Earth was beginning to crack under pressure they could not understand. Commander Zeth stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. His forces were 3 times larger than they had been 6 months ago, but somehow they were less effective than before. Sir, we have another incident, his aide reported nervously. The supply depot in Berlin was completely emptied overnight. Security cameras show nothing. No alarms were triggered. The guards reported normal patrols all night. Zeth rubbed his temples. This was the 15th major supply loss this month. His superiors were demanding explanations he could not provide. How could primitive humans steal entire warehouses of advanced alien technology without leaving any evidence? What Zeth did not know was that Yuna had perfected her cloaking technology to the point where entire teams could move invisibly through Dominion facilities. The Resistance had learned to use the aliens' own security systems against them, creating blind spots and false records that covered their activities. The key is not to fight them directly, Admiral Quan explained to his expanded command staff. We let them fight themselves. The resistance network had grown beyond simple sabotage. They now engaged in what Quan called systems warfare, attacks on the complex web of logistics, communication, and administration that kept the Dominion forces operational. Nara had become a master of information warfare. From her position in the Soul Tunnels, she could access Dominion computer networks across the planet. But instead of stealing information, she did something much more dangerous. She changed it. "I can make their supply computers think they have more food than they actually do," she explained to Quan during one of their planning sessions. "Then, when they run out, they will have to request emergency supplies. But I can also make their emergency supply system think the request is fraudulent." The result was chaos. Dominion units would arrive at supply depots to find empty shelves. Emergency supply requests would be denied by computer systems that had been programmed to treat them as suspicious. Entire bases would go without food or equipment while bureaucratic systems fought each other. Tay had expanded his medical operations in a different direction. He had learned enough about alien biology to create specific biological agents that would make Dominion soldiers sick without harming humans. These were not deadly weapons, just substances that would cause nausea, fatigue, and confusion. "I can put it in their water supply," he told Quan. "They will think it is just a local disease. They will not realize it is targeted specifically at their biology." The biological warfare was subtle but effective. Dominion soldiers found themselves getting sick more often. They had less energy for patrols. They made more mistakes. Their commanders assumed it was just the natural difficulty of adapting to an alien world, but the Resistance's most sophisticated weapon was psychological. They had learned to make the Dominion forces paranoid and suspicious of each other. Yuna's workshop had produced devices that could mimic Dominion communication signatures. The Resistance used these to send false orders and contradictory information. 2 different units. A patrol would receive orders to search a specific area, while another patrol would receive orders to avoid the same area for security reasons. "We are making them think there are security leaks and traitors in their own ranks," Quan explained. "Soon they will spend more time investigating each other than fighting us." The strategy was working perfectly. Commander Zeth found himself dealing with reports of suspicious behavior from his own officers. The units were refusing to follow orders they thought came from compromised sources. The Dominion chain of command was breaking down as soldiers became afraid to trust their own communication systems. Meanwhile, the Resistance network was spreading beyond Earth. Using captured Dominion ships, small teams of humans had begun traveling to other worlds conquered by the aliens. They brought with them the knowledge and techniques developed in the tunnels beneath Sol. "The Dominion has conquered 43 worlds," Nara reported during one of their intelligence briefings. "But they use the same methods on all of them. If we can teach other species our techniques, we can create problems for them across their entire empire." The first successful off-world operation happened on a planet called Kepler 44b, where an aquatic species called the Merhai had been enslaved by the Dominion. A team led by Tay taught them how to create biological agents that would poison Dominion mining operations without harming the local ecosystem. "Their mining platforms are shutting down across the planet," Tay reported when he returned to Earth. "The Dominion thinks it is just environmental contamination, but it is actually targeted biological warfare." Similar operations were launched on other worlds. The Resistance taught the crystalline Silthari how to use cyber warfare to crash Dominion computer systems. They showed the insectoid Klaxons how to use their natural camouflage abilities to conduct invisible sabotage operations. Each successful operation created new problems for the Dominion. Their empire was built on the assumption that conquered species would submit and serve. But now, worlds that had been pacified for decades were experiencing mysterious equipment failures, supply shortages, and administrative breakdowns. "The pattern is spreading," Nara told Quan during one of their regular meetings. Dominion commanders across the galaxy are reporting similar problems. Equipment failures, supply issues, communication breakdowns. They think it is just bad luck, but we know better. The Dominion leadership was beginning to notice that something was wrong, but they could not identify the source of their problems. Each individual incident could be explained away as normal operational difficulties, but the cumulative effect was devastating. Their economy is straining, Yuno reported after analyzing intercepted financial data. They are spending twice as much on occupation forces as they planned. Their profit margins from conquered worlds are disappearing. This was exactly what Quan had hoped for. The resistance was not trying to win a traditional military victory. They were trying to make the Dominion Empire economically unsustainable. Day we continue this operation, their empire becomes weaker, he told his command staff. We're not just fighting for Earth, we are fighting for every world they have conquered. The network had evolved from a simple resistance movement into something much more dangerous, a virus that was spreading through the Dominion's entire structure. They had learned to turn the aliens' own strengths against them. They're advanced. Technology became a weakness when it was sabotaged. Their centralized command structure became a vulnerability when it was infiltrated. Most importantly, they had learned to make the Dominion defeat themselves. Every paranoid investigation, every supply shortage, every communication breakdown weakened the Empire from within. The aliens were spending so much time and resources fighting problems, they could not see that they had less and less capability to maintain their control. In the tunnels beneath Seoul, Admiral Quan looked at the latest reports with satisfaction. The invisible war was working. The Dominion was beginning to crack, but they still did not understand what was happening to them soon. It would be time for the next phase of the plan. The message came through Nara's communication system at exactly midnight, Seoul time. It was transmitted using modified Dominion equipment, but the signal pattern was one that only the Resistance network would recognize. This is Coral Base on Kepler 442b, the voice said in broken English. We have successfully completed Operation Depth Strike. 7 Dominion mining platforms are now offline. The occupiers believe it is natural contamination. They do not suspect sabotage. Admiral? Quan smiled as he listened to the report. Coral Base was their first successful off-world operation, established 6 months ago when Tay had traveled to the water world and taught the Murhai how to conduct biological warfare. Now the aquatic species was causing serious problems for Dominion mining operations. Excellent work, Coral Base, Quan replied into the communication device. Continue operations and report weekly. Remember, stay invisible. The Resistance network had evolved far beyond its original mission of liberating Earth. It had become a galactic phenomenon, spreading from world to world like a virus that infected the Dominion's entire empire. We now have active resistance. Cells on 17 different worlds, Nara reported during their morning briefing. Each one is using techniques we developed here on Earth, but adapted to local conditions and species capabilities. The expansion had been gradual, but steady. Using captured Dominion ships, small teams of humans had traveled to other conquered worlds and made contact with local populations. They did not try to start massive rebellions. Instead, they taught the same patient, visible warfare techniques that had worked so well on Earth. On Proxima Centauri b, the crystalline Siltheri had learned to use their natural ability to interface with computer systems to crash Dominion networks. What looked like random system failures were actually coordinated cyber attacks that disrupted administration across the entire planet. The Silthari are incredibly good at this, Una reported after reviewing their latest operational reports. They can think in ways that are completely alien to Dominion programmers. Their attacks are so sophisticated that the occupiers cannot even understand what is happening. The insectoid klaxons of Wolf 359 had mastered the art of using their hive mind. Communication to coordinate sabotage operations. Entire Dominion facilities would experience simultaneous equipment failures as thousands of klaxon workers introduced tiny defects into their assigned tasks. It is perfect, Quan said as he read their operational reports. The Dominion administrators think the klaxons are just naturally clumsy or incompetent. They never suspect that every mistake is carefully planned. But the most impressive success came from an unexpected source. On a world called TRAPPIST-1e, species of energy beings called the Vorth had learned to use their ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields to create targeted equipment failures. They can make Dominion weapons jam at exactly the right moment. Tay reported after returning from a coordination mission. They can cause communication systems to fail just when the occupiers need them most. And they can do it from a distance. so there is no way to trace the sabotage back to them. The beauty of the expanding network was that each species brought their own unique capabilities to the resistance. Humans provided the strategic framework and coordination, but every world contributed something different to the overall effort. The Murhai were masters of biological warfare, creating agents that specifically targeted Dominion physiology. The Silthari excelled at cyber warfare, using their crystalline nature to interface directly with computer systems. The Klaxons provided perfect coordination through their hive mind communication. The Vorth could manipulate technology from a distance using their energy-based abilities. "We are creating something the Dominion has never faced before," Quan told his command staff during one of their strategic planning sessions. A multi-species resistance network that shares intelligence and techniques across the galaxy. The network operated on the same principles that had made the Earth resistance successful. Stay hidden, learn everything, and strike only when success was certain. Each world's resistance cell operated independently, but they were connected through Nara's communication system and shared resources and information. The Dominion's greatest weakness is their arrogance, Nara explained as she monitored communications between different resistance cells. They believe each world's problems are separate and unrelated. They do not realize that we are coordinating attacks across their entire empire. The coordinated nature of the resistance was becoming more sophisticated every day. When the Dominion moved forces from one world to deal with problems on another, the resistance cells would share information and adjust their operations accordingly. If they pulled troops from Kepler 44 to B to reinforce Proxima Centauri B, we tell the Murhai to increase their mining platform attacks, Quan explained. If they move supply ships from Wolf 359 to Trappist 1E, we tell the Klaxons to target their remaining logistics. The result was a constant shell game that kept the Dominion forces off balance. Every time they thought they had solved a problem in one location, 3 more problems would emerge somewhere else. They were playing a game, with rules they did not understand against opponents they could not see. Their military expenses are increasing exponentially, Una reported after analyzing captured financial data. They are spending more on occupation forces than they are earning from conquered worlds. The empire is becoming economically unsustainable. The resistance network was about more than just economic warfare. It was also spreading knowledge and technology that made each world stronger. Una's reverse-engineered Dominion technology was being shared with resistance cells across the galaxy. Tay's medical knowledge was helping other species develop their own biological weapons. Nara's communication techniques were linking worlds that had been isolated for decades. "We are not just fighting the Dominion," Quan realized during one of their planning sessions. "We are building something new, a network of free worlds that can share knowledge and support each other." The most important development was that the Resistance was beginning to capture larger Dominion assets. On several worlds, coordinated attacks had succeeded in taking control of entire facilities. The Resistance cells were learning to use captured technology to build their own capabilities. "The Silthari have taken control of a Dominion communication," Hubnara reported excitedly. "They are using it to monitor Dominion military communications across 6 different star systems. We now have real-time intelligence on their troop movements and strategic planning." Similar successes were happening on other worlds. The Vorth had captured a Dominion weapons facility and were learning to modify alien technology for their own use. The Klaxons had taken control of a supply depot and were using it to redistribute resources to other resistance cells. "The network is becoming self-sustaining," Tay observed. "Each world is contributing resources and capabilities that help all the others. We are not just surviving anymore, we are growing stronger." The Dominion leadership was beginning to panic. Reports from across their empire described coordinated problems that seemed to be spreading like a disease. Equipment failures, supply shortages, communication breakdowns, and administrative chaos were affecting every conquered world. "It is impossible," Commander Zeth told his superiors during an emergency conference. "These are primitive species. They do not have the capability to coordinate operations across multiple star systems." But the evidence was undeniable. The problems were too widespread and too coordinated to be coincidental. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was organizing a resistance movement that threatened the entire Dominion Empire in the tunnels beneath. Sol Admiral Quan looked at the latest operational reports with satisfaction. The network had grown beyond his wildest dreams. What had started as a small group of humans refusing to surrender had become a galactic alliance that was slowly strangling the Dominion Empire. "We are ready for the next phase," he told his command staff. "It is time to show the galaxy what we have built." Admiral Quan stood in his command center, surrounded by screens showing Dominion military movements across the galaxy. 2 years had passed since Earth's surrender, and the resistance network had grown into something the aliens could no longer ignore. Reports of coordinated attacks were flooding in from every corner of their empire. "They are starting to connect the dots," Nara reported as she monitored Dominion communication channels. Command staff on multiple worlds are reporting similar attack patterns. They're beginning to suspect organized resistance. This was exactly what Quan had been waiting for. The Invisible War had been successful, but it had also revealed the network's existence. Soon, the Dominion would mobilize their full military might to hunt down the resistant cells. When that happened, the scattered groups of freedom fighters would be crushed, unless they gave the Dominion something else to worry about. "It is time for Operation Phantom Enemy," Quan announced to his command staff. "We are going to make them believe they are facing an entirely different threat." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Using captured Dominion technology and their detailed knowledge of alien psychology, the Resistance would create false evidence of a powerful, technologically advanced civilization that posed an existential threat to the Dominion Empire. "We need to make them believe that an unknown enemy with superior technology is attacking their territory." Yuna explained as she worked on modified communication devices. Not primitive resistance fighters, but a genuine military threat that could destroy their entire civilization. The deception began with carefully planted evidence. Resistance cells across the galaxy used their captured technology to create false sensor readings that suggested the presence of massive invisible fleets. Dominion monitoring stations would detect energy signatures that matched no known technology, moving through space in patterns that suggested coordinated military operations. "The beauty of this approach is that we are using their own sensors against them," Nara said as she coordinated the false signal transmissions. "The evidence is coming from their own equipment, so they have no reason to doubt it." The Phantom Enemy was designed to exploit every weakness in Dominion psychology that the Resistance had learned over 2 years of warfare. The aliens were arrogant and believed themselves to be the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. The idea that an unknown species with superior technology was attacking them would be terrifying. "They will panic," Tay observed as he prepared biological evidence to support the deception. "Their entire identity is based on technological superiority. If they believe someone is more advanced than they are, they will do anything to protect themselves." The false evidence was introduced gradually and carefully. Dominion patrols would discover the wreckage of their own ships with damage patterns that suggested unknown weapons. Communication stations would intercept coded transmissions in a language that no Dominion linguist could identify. Scientific outposts would detect energy readings that indicated technology beyond anything in their databases. "The key is to make them draw their own conclusions," Quan explained to his expanded command team. "We provide the evidence, but we let them create the story." The Dominion intelligence services quickly developed a theory about what they were seeing. An unknown civilization with advanced stealth technology was conducting reconnaissance operations. Throughout Dominion space, the invisible fleets were gathering intelligence for what appeared to be a massive coordinated attack. "They are calling it the Shadow Fleet," Nara reported as she monitored Dominion communication channels. "They believe it is a scouting force for an invasion that could happen at any time." The panic spread through the Dominion command structure like wildfire. If an unknown enemy was preparing to attack, every available ship and soldier would be needed to defend the Empire's core systems. Resources began flowing away from conquered worlds toward the Dominion's home territory. "It is working perfectly," Yuna said, as she tracked Dominion fleet movements. They are pulling occupation forces from 17 different worlds to protect their home systems. The resistance cells are reporting massive decreases in alien military presence. But the deception was about more than just moving ships around. The resistance was creating evidence of increasingly sophisticated attacks that suggested the Shadow Fleet was not just gathering intelligence, but actively sabotaging Dominion operations. Supply convoys would disappear without trace, with sensor readings suggesting they had been destroyed by unknown weapons. Communication networks would fail with patterns that indicated cyber attacks using technology the Dominion could not understand. Critical facilities would suffer catastrophic failures that appeared to be the result of sabotage by invisible enemies. Every real attack by our resistance cells is being attributed to the Shadow Fleet, Tay reported with satisfaction. They think every equipment failure, every supply shortage, every communication breakdown is part of a coordinated assault by an advanced enemy. The Dominion military was mobilizing their entire fleet to face a threat that did not exist. Meanwhile, the real resistance network was using the distraction to launch their most ambitious operations yet. Now is the time, Quan told his command staff. While they are looking for phantom enemies, we emerge from the shadows. Across the galaxy, resistance cells began their liberation campaigns. On Kepler 44b, the Murhai rose from their underwater cities to reclaim their mining facilities. The Silthari took control of their communication networks and began broadcasting calls for freedom. On Wolf 359, the Klaxons coordinated a planet-wide work stoppage that brought Dominion operations to a complete halt. The timing is perfect, Nara reported as she coordinated communications between different resistance cells. The Dominion has so few forces on the occupied worlds that they cannot respond to multiple uprisings simultaneously. The liberation movements were supported by the full resources of the resistance network. Yuna's workshops provided advanced weapons and equipment. Tay's medical knowledge helped treat casualties and develop biological weapons. Nara's communication system allowed perfect coordination between different species and worlds. Just fighting for individual worlds anymore, Quan realized as he watched reports of successful operations flood in. We are fighting for the freedom of every species the Dominion has conquered. The most important part of the plan was that the resistance cells were being careful to maintain the illusion of the Shadow Fleet. Every successful operation was designed to look like the work of advanced alien technology rather than primitive resistance fighters. The Dominion still believes they are fighting the Shadow Fleet, Nara reported. They think the uprisings are just chaos caused by their main enemy. They do not realize that the uprisings are the real threat. The deception was so successful that the Dominion began making strategic mistakes that helped the resistance even more. They concentrated their forces in empty space, hunting for phantom fleets that would never be found. They developed new weapons and defenses designed to counter technology that did not exist, wasting enormous resources on useless projects. They are redesigning their entire military doctrine to fight the Shadow Fleet, Yuna reported with amazement. They are creating countermeasures for weapons we never built, and defenses against attacks we never planned. Meanwhile, the real resistance network was using captured Dominion technology to build actual advanced weapons. Every day they controlled more territory and resources. Every day they grew stronger while their enemies grew weaker. The irony is perfect, Tay observed during one of their strategy meetings. They are so afraid of an imaginary advanced enemy that they are ignoring the real advanced enemy we are becoming. The psychological warfare was having effects that went beyond simple military tactics. The Dominion's confidence in their own superiority was cracking. If unknown enemies could hide entire fleets from their sensors and attack their facilities without being detected, what other threats might be lurking in the galaxy? They are becoming paranoid and defensive, Nara reported as she monitored Dominion leadership communications. They are starting to question everything they thought they knew about their own capabilities. The Resistance had achieved something remarkable. They had turned the Dominion's greatest strength, their technological arrogance, into their greatest weakness. The aliens were so convinced of their own superiority that the possibility of facing a more advanced enemy was driving them to panic. Have created the perfect enemy, Quan said as he looked at the strategic displays showing Dominion fleet movements. An enemy that is everywhere and nowhere, that can strike without warning and disappear without trace. An enemy that exists only in their minds, but is destroying their empire. The liberation campaigns were accelerating across the galaxy. World after world was rising up against their Dominion occupiers, supported by the Resistance Network and covered by the Shadow Fleet deception. The empire that had once seemed invincible was crumbling from within. 17 worlds have declared independence in the last month, Nara reported excitedly. The Dominion cannot respond because they think the Shadow Fleet is preparing a major attack on their home systems. But the most important victory was not military, it was psychological. The galaxy was learning that the Dominion could be defeated. Species that had been enslaved for decades were seeing that freedom was possible. The legend of human resistance was spreading from world to world. They are calling us the Ghostmakers, Tay said as he returned from a coordination mission to TRAPPIST-1E. The species we have helped believe that humans have the power to create invisible armies and phantom fleets. The reputation was both accurate and useful. The Resistance Network had indeed created an invisible army that operated across the galaxy. They had built a phantom fleet of coordinated resistance cells that could strike anywhere without warning. The legends were based on truth. Let them believe we have supernatural powers, Quan said with a smile. Fear is a weapon, and we have learned to use it better than any species in the galaxy. The Dominion was trapped in a nightmare of their own. They were fighting an enemy that existed only in their imagination, while the real enemy systematically dismantled their empire. Every day brought new reports of uprisings, equipment failures, and military defeats. Their economy is collapsing, UNA reported after analyzing captured financial data. They are spending everything they have on defense against the Shadow Fleet, while losing control of the worlds that generate their wealth. The Great Deception had worked perfectly. The Dominion was destroying itself, while the Resistance grew stronger. Soon, it would be time for the final phase of the plan, the moment when the galaxy would learn the truth about who had really defeated the mighty Dominion Empire. The Dominion Empire was dying, and they finally knew why. High Admiral Vex stood in the ruins of what had once been the most powerful military command center in the galaxy. Around him, screens flickered with reports of defeat after defeat. 43 worlds had declared independence. Supply lines were broken, communication networks were compromised. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was collapsing in a matter of months. Sir, we have confirmation, his aide said with a shaking voice. The Shadow Fleet does not exist. It never existed. Vex closed his eyes. He'd suspected the truth for weeks, but hearing it confirmed was still devastating. What do we know? The attacks, the sensor readings, the communications, all of it was fake. It's created by resistance networks using our own technology against us. The aide paused, then continued with obvious difficulty. Sir, it appears to have been coordinated from Earth. Earth, the primitive world they had conquered 2 years ago. The backward planet that had surrendered after 3 months of fighting. Vex felt his legs grow weak as the full scope of the deception became clear. How many of our forces are currently hunting for the Shadow Fleet? He asked. 70% of our total military, sir? They are spread across empty space, searching for enemies that do not exist. While the mighty Dominion fleet chased phantoms, the real enemy had systematically destroyed their empire from within. It was the most devastating military deception in galactic history. And it had been planned by humans, the species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. On Earth, Admiral Quan stood in the rebuilt command center in Seoul, watching the final phase of the liberation campaign unfold. Dominion forces across the planet were surrendering or fleeing. The occupation that had seemed permanent was collapsing in a matter of days. All major cities are reporting freedom, Lieutenant Park announced. She was older now, hardened by 2 years of underground warfare. But her voice carried the same determination it had in the dark days after the surrender. What is the status of the global communication network? Quan asked. Fully operational and under our control, Nara replied from her station. We can broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Quan nodded. It was time for the galaxy to learn the truth. Time for the Dominion to understand what they had really been fighting. Time for every conquered species to see that freedom was possible. Open a channel to all frequencies, he ordered. It is time to address the galaxy. The broadcast began simultaneously on every world, every space station, every ship in known space. The image showed not a monster or an advanced alien, but a simple human man standing in a room that looked ordinary and unremarkable. "My name is Admiral Quan," he began in a calm, clear voice. "I am speaking to you from Earth, the world the Dominion declared defeated 2 years ago." Across the galaxy, beings of every species stopped what they were doing to listen. On Dominion ships, alien soldiers stared at their screens in disbelief. This was impossible. Earth was conquered. Humans were primitive. "The Galactic Dominion told you that Earth surrendered," Quan continued. "They told you that humanity was broken and defeated. They told you that we were just another primitive species brought into their empire." They paused, letting the words sink. And across the galaxy, they were wrong. The simple statement carried the weight of 2 years of impossible victories. On world after world, resistance fighters emerged from hiding to watch their coordinators speak to the galaxy. The Murhai surfaced from their underwater cities. The Silthari gathered around their crystal communication networks. The Klaxons stopped their coordinated activities to listen. The Vorth focused their energy forms to receive the transmission. "Humanity never surrendered," Quan said. "We adapted. We learned. We built a network of resistance that spans the galaxy. Every equipment failure you have experienced, every supply shortage, every communication breakdown, these were not accidents. They were the result of careful planning by species you believed were defeated." On Dominion command ships across the galaxy, officers realized they were hearing the voice of their true enemy for the first time. Not an advanced alien species with superior technology, but humans, the primitives they had dismissed and forgotten. "The shadow fleet you have been hunting does not exist," Quan continued. "It was a creation of our intelligence networks designed to distract you while we liberated world after world. While you chased phantoms, we built something real, an alliance of free species working together." The broadcast included footage from liberation campaigns across the galaxy. Viewers saw Murhai reclaiming their underwater cities, Silthari taking control of communication networks, Klaxons organizing planet-wide strikes, Vorth disabling Dominion weapons with their energy manipulation abilities. "You declared us defeated because you could not imagine that primitive species could resist your advanced technology," Quan said. "But you misunderstood what you were fighting. You were not fighting our technology. You were fighting our refusal to accept defeat." Psychological impact was devastating. Every Dominion soldier, every alien administrator, every government official was forced to confront the truth. They had been defeated not by superior weapons or advanced science, but by simple determination and clever planning. "Your empire is built on the belief that technological superiority guarantees victory," Quan continued. "But technology is just a tool. Victory comes from the will to keep fighting when fighting seems impossible." The broadcast showed images of the resistance network, humans working alongside dozens of alien species, sharing knowledge and resources, coordinating operations across impossible distances. It was clear that this was not just a human victory, but a galactic alliance built on the principles of freedom and cooperation. "To every species that has been conquered by the Dominion, we offer you this lesson. You are only defeated when you accept defeat. As long as one person refuses to surrender, resistance is possible." Across the galaxy, conquered species were rising up. The broadcast had provided not just information, but inspiration. If humans could defeat the Dominion, anyone could. "To the Dominion leadership, we offer you a choice," Quan said, his voice growing harder. "You can continue fighting a war you have already lost, or you can accept that your empire is over and allow the galaxy to be free." The response was immediate. On world after world, Dominion forces were laying down their weapons. Some were fleeing to their home systems, others were requesting permission to surrender. The empire that had ruled through fear and technological superiority was crumbling as its fundamental assumptions were proven false. The galaxy declared Earth defeated Quan. Concluded, today, the galaxy learns that Earth declared the Dominion defeated 2 years ago. You just did not know it yet. The broadcast ended, but its effects would last forever. The Dominion Empire would never recover from the revelation that they had been outmaneuvered by primitives. More importantly, every species in the galaxy now knew that freedom was possible in the command center in Seoul. Quan looked around at the team that had made the impossible victory reality. Yuna, whose engineering genius had turned alien technology against its creators. Day, whose medical knowledge had weaponized biology itself. Nara, whose communication skills had coordinated resistance across the galaxy. What now, sir? Park asked. Quan smiled as he looked at the reports flooding in from liberated worlds across the galaxy. Now we build something better. A galaxy where freedom is not just possible, but protected. The man who had refused to accept Earth's defeat had become the architect of galactic liberation. The species that was declared primitive had taught the galaxy a lesson that would never be forgotten. True victory belongs to those who never stop fighting for it.